Ladies and gentlemen, from the East Coast to the West Coast and everyone in between, welcome to Coming Together LLC, where passion and pain meet. I'm your host, AJ. We're going to follow our last segment with a similar topic here, staying on immigration. We have a guest here that goes back into the workforce with me, which is how we know each other. I'm going to introduce Hunter Zacher and let him go through a little bit about just your intro, who you are, and then we'll get into the immigration topics one by one and go from there. So, floor is yours, my friend.
Well, hi AJ. Thanks for having me on the show, brother. It's
Mhm.
good to see you, good to chat with you.
Yes,
Let
yes.
me give you a little bit of background on myself. Um, so I'm originally from Germany, from Berlin, back in the day, West Berlin at the time, to age myself a little bit here.
Yeah.
And at age 10, we moved from Berlin to East Africa and Tanzania. So I was very fortunate to grow up in, the sunshine, in a very happy place. And I loved it the second we got there. It was a big adventure. We lived on the Indian Ocean. I learned scuba diving at age 11. We went on safaris. It was truly a magical life. And lived there until I think I was 15. So just 5 years, but very formative years. And we then moved back to Germany, and I did not like Germany at all anymore because I realized that people are grumpy, which I think I've come to the conclusion that humans reflect the climate that they live in. So if
Mhm.
it's dreary and cold, people will be the same. And so I knew pretty quickly that I didn't want to live there anymore. And so after high school, I moved to France and volunteered with mentally handicapped people for a year over there. I wanted to learn French and I didn't really care how or where to go about it. And this opportunity arose, and I was a living caregiver for handicapped people, and I loved France, and the French loved me once I spoke their language.
Right.
But I also knew this was not where I wanted to be. And I traveled pretty extensively throughout my life, and however, I'd never been to the United States. And I thought, Europeans are oddly prejudiced against America, I find. And I don't believe in any kind of prejudice whatsoever. It's just ignorance, it's a lack of
Yeah,
knowledge
yeah.
of anything. And so I decided, well, I got to go check it out. I had just finished hotel management school in Germany, which I'd studied in order to be able to go anywhere in the world, because obviously hotels are all over. Um, at this point, I was fluent in four languages. I had learned English and Swahili growing up in Tanzania, and then French in France, and then German, obviously. And I was like, well, the world is big and beautiful, or small and beautiful, however you want to see it. It's very connected now. And I decided that once I read online that Arizona was one of the sunniest places on earth, I thought to myself, well, I like the sunshine. Cowboys and cacti sounds fun. The Wild West. Let's go check it out. And so 17 years ago, I think it was New Year's Eve in 2008, 2007 to 2008, I arrived in Phoenix, and very quickly I fell in love with Arizona.
Mhm.
I think, again, it boils back to humans reflect the climate they live in. I
Yeah.
think people here are very friendly, outgoing, very welcoming. Um, and it's a beautiful, beautiful spot in general. I think we have some of the most sunshine days a year, almost on a global scale. And the quality of life that I encountered here was phenomenal.
Yes.
And so I loved it right away. And I was working at a resort in Paradise Valley at the time. And technically, I was scheduled to be here for 1 year. And after that, my game plan was to move to Saudi Arabia, maybe Dubai somewhere or something like that, and learn Arabic. Um, but that plan got changed when I met my wife, and that's the beginning of my story in the United States, essentially.
All right. I totally get it. Myself originally, I'm from New York. So Arizona, I'm
Yeah,
creeping up on 5 years here now, and people kind of acclimating and being like the environment that they're in. I get it.
yeah,
Totally get
yeah,
it. Yeah. Fast paced in New York, everybody's kind of short fused. People think that we're a-holes out there. You meet some great people in New York, but the
yeah,
patience is razor thin, out there, whereas things are a
absolutely.
little more level and mellow here.
Yeah,
Okay. So over to your process for I know that for our folks, he just went through citizenship, which was just approved, what, a couple of weeks ago that I saw that you posted,
yeah. Two
US
weeks ago,
citizenship. So
December 2nd, I
congratulations
became a
there.
citizen. Thank you,
Yep.
brother.
So walk us through the process of what you went through as far as the front to back, and let's go on the topic of the time frame originally and what it meant to you becoming a U.S. citizen. Like, what was the gravity of that?
Okay, so once I arrived here in the United States, within 3 months, I met my gorgeous wife, Christy, who's born and raised in Phoenix. And then we were dating for 9 months, which was the cutoff for me, right? Because I was only allowed to be here for a year on a restricted visa.
Right, right.
And I I was in love with her, but I didn't want to get married. We're young at the time. I think I was 24 or 5, and she was just barely 20. And so, well, I had to leave the country, right? Because I wasn't going to stay here illegally, and I
Yeah,
didn't want to get married just to be allowed to stay because that's the wrong reason for me to get married. So I left back to
right.
Germany, and we did the long distance thing for a while. And she came to visit me, and I came to visit her, and she came to visit me. And then I realized, I'm in love with this woman. This is the one for me. I want to marry her. And so I had traveled a lot and I already knew that I loved Arizona.
Yep.
So I decided, well, let me come here because I love it here. I didn't want to uproot her yet. She had only lived in Phoenix, Arizona her entire life. So I thought it would be easiest for me to do that. And again, I like it a lot better here than I do Germany.
Yeah.
So that was an easy choice for me. And we got married in 2010 in Sedona, which is where I'm sitting right now.
Mhm.
And we, at the time, uh, once you are legally married, then your legal status changes,
Right.
right? So if you come from abroad, technically you have to come on a fiance visa to be
Mhm.
able to get married here. And I think, the process in general is basic if you're a master of the English language, right? Which not all immigrants are, so it can be
Right.
challenging. So once we got married, the legal status changes to a point where you can then apply for a green card, right?
Okay.
So at this point, you do not yet have a work authorization and you do not yet have a green card, which is why you're not allowed to work technically, right? So it's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
vicious cycle. Which means after we got married, it was challenging times because I wasn't allowed to work. And, she was barely at that time 21 years young. And so, I can see how it can be very challenging because the immigration process, I think it took me 6 months and it can take a lot longer than that, right? So
Yeah.
because I wasn't allowed to work, I thought to myself, why would I hire an immigration lawyer if I have nothing but time? So I decided to be my own immigration lawyer and I studied
Okay.
the immigration paperwork very um very in a very detailed way, right? Because I was filling out all of my paperwork, I was doing everything, and it is very labyrinthian. So again, if you're
Yeah.
not used to studying, if you're not a master of the language, it sends you on you know, almost a labyrinth to get through the paperwork. You have to jump from page 4 to page 240 and fill out something here and then go back and forth. And it it was challenging, right? And again, if you have the time and the energy and you're cheap and you don't want to spend the money on a lawyer, then you
Yeah.
you can for sure do it yourself.
Yeah.
But again, only if you speak English fluently, I think.
Right.
So I did that, and then within 6 months, I got my green card, which was great, right? Because then you're legal to be in the United States as a permanent resident. That's what a green card is, right? You have
Hmm.
permanent residency,
Hmm.
and that is valid for 10 years at a time.
10 years. Okay.
Exactly. So then, once you have that, that comes automatically with a work authorization, and then you can get a job. So right after
Okay.
that, obviously, I got a job. We lived in Mesa, Arizona at the time, and Germany at the time. So usually, I believe it's 3 years before you can become a citizen.
Right.
Right. So you have to live and be married for 3 years, right? And obviously, it has to be a legitimate marriage, right? That's, immigration authorities will ask you questions about all of that, right? There's an interview process you have to go through where they'll ask you random things like, what side of the sink is your wife's toothbrush on, right? So just
Yeah.
just to see if they can, if they can catch you off guard or whatnot, to see,
Yeah.
is it legitimate, or
Yep.
is it a marriage on paper to get you to be allowed to be here?
Hmm.
And obviously, I was in love with the girl, so it was easy for me, and the whole
Yep.
process to date was easy. And then, yeah, we lived happily in Phoenix for a year, moved to Miami Beach for 4 years, loved it there. Different experience altogether, very different um, population in Miami. I learned fluent Spanish over there, which was great. And at the time, after then, those 3 years passed where I would have become eligible for for my citizenship.
Mhm.
Germany made it very difficult to obtain dual citizenship.
Okay.
So yeah, so you would have had to um, petition the German government for me to be allowed to have dual citizenship because Germany did not really allow that. That was an exception. And in all honesty, I thought to myself, well, why bother? I have a green card, I'm legal. All I
Yeah.
have to do is renew that every 10 years. With that, once you have a green card, anytime anything in your life, anything major changes, you have to notify Homeland Security essentially.
Right.
Any move that you make, right? If you change your address, you have to notify them and fill out a form and say, hey guys, I'm moving to Miami. Hey guys, I'm moving back to Arizona, right? They always want to know where you are.
Yeah.
And it is the burden is on you as the citizen to have to share that information. And I think
Right.
if you don't, it could make your life more difficult once you
Yeah.
try to become a
Yeah.
citizen. And then so I've been here now 17 years, right? And I never really, I mean, immediately I love the United States of America. To me, honestly, hands down, best country in the world, right? A
Yeah.
lot of issues here too, right? Every country has major challenges. The United States does too. But overall, it's the best. I don't think anywhere else in the world would you ever have this quality of life,
Right.
where we lived in the most uh, basic apartments in Mesa, Arizona. Some people would call it the ghetto. It was $400 a month at the time, and yeah, now looking back, I'm like, yeah, it was not without challenges, but at the same time, the apartment complex had three pools and hot tubs. You would never
Yeah.
find that in
Yeah.
Germany, right?
Right.
So the quality of life, even if you're not making a lot of money, is a lot better than you'd find anywhere else in the world, I think.
And you made note of dual citizenship in Germany making it hard. On
Yeah,
that note, was it making it hard in a way where the German side was loyalty to Germany, kind of like what we hear our government talking about now in current times, or like immigrants loyal
yeah,
to the US and like acclimate to your country, or we're going to make things, impossible for you. Was it kind of like
yeah.
that from the German side?
Um, Yeah, I think so, that was the
Yeah,
idea. So some Germans made the mistake back in the day of just applying for US citizenship, assuming that they would then have dual citizenship.
right.
But upon gaining American citizenship, if you didn't petition the government, you automatically lost your German citizenship, right?
Oh, okay.
And there's a multitude of reasons why I do want to keep my German citizenship, right? So A, it's my heritage, it's where I was
Yeah,
born,
yep,
right? Even though sometimes, when people ask me where's home, obviously home is here now, and I've traveled a lot,
yeah,
but that is where I'm from, and that is where, both of my parents were born and raised, my grandparents, their parents, and going back many, many, many generations, right? So obviously I'm tied to that country. And then of course, Germany also has phenomenal benefits to its citizens, right? Like education is almost free. You can go to university at almost no cost. It's got a great, healthcare system, um, right? And my children are dual citizens, right? Because they're born to me in America, right? And as a German citizen, I can give them German citizenship, which is, to me, there's nothing but benefits to dual citizenship,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
In any sense of the word, right? Um, I don't see anything negative, right? As a citizen, of course, you can be drafted in any country technically, right? And I mean, yeah, if ever that were the case, I would gladly do that for either one of my countries now,
right.
and that's how it is and how it should be. And last year in October, Germany waived their very stringent rules on dual citizenship.
Okay.
And so they said, you know what? We're going to allow dual citizenship now. People say for various reasons, some say for political reasons in Germany. I don't know. I can't judge that fact, and it, to me, it doesn't matter at the end of the day because it's a benefit to me, right? And
Right.
then once Germany waived those stringent rules, I thought to myself, well, you know what? I love this country. I feel at home here. All three of our children were born here, and this is home, and this is where we will be spending the foreseeable future. So why not become an American citizen, right?
Mhm.
And so then slowly this year, I started the process, right? And the process in America starts with you fill out a form, I forgot what it's called, to request citizenship. You fill it out, all of your paperwork, where you've traveled over the last 5 years, which that's always the biggest challenge to me because we travel quite a bit. And to
Right.
remember what vacation you went on 4 years ago to Europe, somewhere, that Mexico, who knows where you went. That honestly was the most challenging aspect. And then you have to list where you've lived, that's also from with dates and stuff like that. So just tedious figuring that out. Everything else is very easy because it's just, what's your name? What's your alien registration number, right? That's the green card number.
Yep, yep.
And then you send it in and you pay an application fee, which I think was right around 500 bucks.
Okay.
So not nothing, but also not crazy, you know.
Yeah.
And actually, during my process, which was recent, the government was shut down, and I was wondering if my appointments would even be taking place.
Yep.
And so I called them and I asked, hey, I know the government is shut down. I have an appointment tomorrow. Are you guys even open? And through that call, I learned that that entire department for immigration finances itself in its entirety through the fees that the immigrants pay,
Okay.
which is kind of an awesome system if you think about it, right? It's
Yeah.
not an additional cost to the government. The entirety of it is funded through those fees that we pay. And I think that's smart business, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to immigrate, I want to become a citizen. Here's the fee, take it or leave it, right? And I'm fortunate that $500 may not seem like crazy much to me. I know there's other
Yeah.
people that may struggle with that, right?
Yeah.
But I think in the general scheme of things, it's not crazy much money for becoming a citizen, right? Because
Mm.
I value that very much. And so then I was invited to an interview where, you get an invitation that says, please come in for your immigration. It's called naturalization. The whole
Yes. Yep.
process is called naturalization, right?
Yep.
And they invite you to an interview in an office somewhere in a major city. In my case, right, I live in Sedona in northern Arizona. Um, the office is in Phoenix, so you drive
Phoenix.
down there. And until that point, everything had been very easy, very straightforward. Paperwork, fee, done. And I was under the impression that this was the interview to determine whether I was eligible for the citizenship test, right? Everybody has to take a test to show that you understand the values of the country, the politics of the country, the system that this country is governed under,
Right.
right? And while I was in the waiting room, I asked ChatGPT, what should I expect in my first interview? And it told me the civics test, and I got really scared because I was like, "Oh my God, I haven't studied it at all,"
Yeah.
And I mean, I read the news, I stay up on information quite a bit, so I was a little bit scared, but at the same time, I was like, I should know most of the things, And what was good is they have the entire test online to allow people to study.
Okay.
So I
Yep.
was able to read through the whole thing 3 times in the 10 minutes before my interview. And then I learned a few things, like how many years is a senator elected for? I would have guessed 4. It was 6, right?
6.
I was not aware, for example, that the stripes on the American flag, the 13 stripes,
13
for the
colonies.
original 13 colonies.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
The basic knowledge that every American kid has learned throughout school.
You would
Um,
wonder the things that you went through for that testing and studying aren't really embedded in our schools. And it should, in my opinion, it really
yeah,
should be a core piece of what we teach our kids here in America.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff everybody should know,
Yeah.
right? Like, who are the 2 senators for Arizona? Who is Arizona's governor, right? And all of these things I would have known, but it's still different when you're sitting in front of a immigration agent face to face, right? And they're asking you, who
Yeah.
are the 2 senators?
A little pressure.
Like, oh, yeah, no pressure,
Yeah.
exactly. And then there's a small English test where they ask you some basic questions. They ask you to write a sentence. They ask you to read a sentence. I thought very, very basic. So anybody that speaks a lick of English should get through that easily. I would strongly suggest studying for the civics test because I got lucky.
Right.
Um, and I did not realize that the interview meant that it was the test.
Yeah.
But luckily I passed everything and yeah, then they said, all right, well, thank you so much. You have passed the test. And I thought there would be more to this process. And then she said, well, you're going to receive an invitation here sometime via mail to invite you to your naturalization ceremony. And I was like, what? That's it?
That's it.
She said, yeah. Uh, and I was like, wow, that was actually super easy.
Mm.
And then I walked out of there and I was genuinely, overwhelmed with emotion. I was very excited, and I was very thankful. And I was, I I happen to like country music. We live in Arizona, right? There's
Yeah.
a lot of country music here, and one of my favorite songs of all time is Chicken Fried by Zach Brown
Oh,
Band.
hell yeah. One of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that essentially has been my anthem for Arizona and the United States in general because I love the lyrics also. The message in that song is phenomenal, I think.
Yeah.
And so I was really moved and I blasted that song, shouted at the top of my lungs while I was driving back and was celebrating the fact that, I'm about to become a US citizen.
Mm.
And then, yeah, a couple of weeks later, the invitation came, and I had my kids skip school, and my wife and I, we drove down. My in-laws live in Phoenix, so we spent the night with them, and we're celebrating the night before. And then we all drove there. It was at 8 in the morning, the ceremony, drove there, and yeah, my whole family came. So my two brothers-in-law came and surprised me, uh, with kid with one of my sisters-in-law, and it was just super awesome. Everybody was there, and
Yeah.
then you're sitting in a big crowd of people. I'm gonna guess there was 100 people there that were becoming citizens, and it's a bit of a, they give a little speech, and it was really a moving, ceremony, and it was cool. Then they call you by name, and I was very excited. I jumped
Yeah.
up, I was wearing a suit jacket that had sewn into the jacket the American flag, so I was flashing it,
Yes.
getting excited. And then you get your certificate, and as of that point, the second you sign it, you are officially an American citizen. And it was a big moment, right? My whole family was there and they were giving me hugs and congratulating me. And yeah, it was very moving and very exciting. And I'm incredibly grateful to this country for accepting me in. Thank you, Anthony, for
Yeah.
having me in your beautiful country. I've
Yeah.
I've said that
Yeah.
always, I'm in hospitality, so I meet people every day of my life. And sometimes you chat with them and they say, hey, you have a bit of an accent, where are you from? And I say Germany. And I always make it a point to say thank you so much for having me in your beautiful country,
Yeah.
because one of the important things for me when migrating anywhere is assimilation, right?
Right.
Because sometimes I think we have a bit, people have lived here for 10 years and they may not speak the language. And I always think, oh, that's weird, right?
Right.
When we lived in Tanzania, my family, my parents made it a point to learn Swahili, right? They actually already spoke it because they'd been there prior before we were born. But we would frown upon Germans that had lived there for many years and chose not to learn the local language, right? And I think you know again, assimilation is important, learning the language, respecting the customs, right? And becoming a part of the society that you want to be in, right? And I love America. I love the people here. I love how welcoming they are. I love how diverse it is,
Yeah.
right? And we are essentially a nation of immigrants. Everybody here is an immigrant, right? It's just a question of how many generations back, right?
Truth.
Other
Yes.
other than Native Americans, right, that have been here a lot longer than anybody else,
Yep.
everyone is an immigrant, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm all for migration and immigration on the basis of assimilation, right? So thanks again for having me in your beautiful country and now my country too.
Oh, congratulations again and welcome, my friend. Okay, if I steal a couple of your shots off of Facebook and use them for our post?
Oh, absolutely,
I love the
100%.
one
Go
with
ahead.
the American flag and the jacket. Yeah, I love that. Loved it.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to make sure we don't get cut off, and I think we're down to like the final 3 minutes. You've covered a ton through your process, which was fantastic and is going to be very educational to a lot of people, American or maybe immigrants looking to come into America, which is fantastic. So a huge thank you for that. If you saw the last video that I did with the other two folks that were coming in from immigration, they're in the process right now. They just got
Yeah,
married a few months ago. They're really going through it. If they were able to come back and watch on this one, I'm sure they'll
yeah.
pick up a lot of helpful tips along the way, especially that studying that you're talking about having to do for the exam. That's a big one. And kudos to you for getting it done in 10 minutes and retaining the information that you did. Not a lot of people would be able to pull that off. So yes, I know you got to get back to work. I don't want us getting cut off here, so I'm going to halt us there. All right, folks. We did in fact get cut short of time as I was trying to avoid there with Heiner, but I'm wrapping this one up back at home. So yes, you are seeing a different version of me, shaved head, sweatshirt on. Yes, my clothes changed because I am now back home wrapping this one up. But that said, again, quick thank you to Heiner. Just gave us a fantastic segment with all kinds of tidbits and information on his version of the immigration process, what he just went through personally himself and getting it done from start to finish. One thing that I wanted to touch on really quick before closing out, one topic that we did cover together in previous chats that we weren't able to get on video segment. Unfortunately, I apologize for that. But that was on the topic of illegal or undocumented immigrants, however you want to phrase that. And we were in agreement on pretty much everything that we talked about on that. So I feel like I can kind of speak for both of us on this one here really quickly. Short and simple. I mean, we basically covered the point of a system can have pressure put on it and be bent and bent and bent until it eventually breaks. And we talked about a broken immigration system here in our country. Well, that break hasn't truly happened yet. I think it just needs a reform, and we use that word as well. But that reform has to come with some basic understanding. In my last segment on the immigration policy, you'll see that I made note of certain numbers that were thrust on us with the last 4 or so years of immigrants that came through that were undocumented, unchecked, illegal, whatever, again, whatever you want to phrase that as. But it was literally like 50 to 1, like on the amount that we set as a census bar between the president and Congress for us to have annually. And that bar is set every year by president and Congress, and it hasn't changed in the last 3, 4 years. So that would be between Biden and Trump. It wouldn't matter who you picked. That ceiling hasn't flexed. It's 125,000 people. We let in, I think DHS gave us a figure of about 6.5 million, and that's just ones that were literally accounted for. Like, right, like runaways, getaways, things like that, they're not accounted for. Let's just call it 8 million. That would be the equivalent of having a home of like 5-bedroom house and trying to take in 250 people. That's insane. There isn't a person watching this that would say, yeah, I'll take that burden on while trying to feed and house and clothe and educate and all those kinds of things for all those people. It's just physically impossible. And to say that it's not a drain on the system and that we don't use certain funds for illegal immigrants is just a flat out farce. I mean, dig into it a little bit, you know? In my last segment, I made note of all those kinds of things and where the sources were coming from. And yeah, in fact, you know, tax dollars are used for certain pieces of illegal immigration support. And outside of our vets, which should come first and foremost, you know, that money needs to go to people that truly need it, that came in here the right way. And ultimately, that's what Heiner and I talked about, is coming in the right way, the way that he did it. You know, it sucks that the waiting line is long. It sucks that the process is long. It sucks that the process takes time and costs, you know, money. You know, for him, it didn't seem like that much. For my folks in my previous segment, it did seem like it was a lot because they got lawyers involved. But, you know, the rules are what they are. You know, you want those rules changed. That's where your votes count, to go in and vote in different presidency, different people in Congress, different people in charge of your states. You know, it's just that simple. But all of us going at each other's throats about it, social media, is laughable. You know, it's that's where the divide comes from. Because guess what? It's not going to change anything. We don't set policies. Our complaining doesn't change policies, right? Our votes for certain people that go in office, that's how we get things done. And that's how policies get changed. But we got to have a mass quantity of people voting for a certain direction to have that direction flexed in through policy, through our government system. So that was basically it, guys. Again, thank you all for watching. This one is going to come at a time where we're right on the cusp of Christmas. So I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas
Next segment, I am going to try to push for next Tuesday in between Christmas and New Year. That will bring back a previous guest, Corey, who is going to kind of do a re-up with me on the 100-day challenge. Look for that one, guys. That one's going to be fun. It's all about self-improvement through health and wellness. And that will get done through a support group of people that are a part of the social media channel that we're going to use to showcase those workouts, so to speak. So as you all know, how did this bring us together? Again, educational piece, immigration. You have to have an open heart for the people that are trying to come here. I get that. For those that are saying everybody should just be allowed to walk through, you have to have an understanding of that there's just certain rules and parameters. If you wouldn't allow something in your own household, you shouldn't look to force that on people of the country, right? In your own household, you have complete control of everything going on in your domain. In the country, you do not. You just have a voice of a small piece of everything that we all share. So to thrust a bunch of people on us through a support system of tax dollars that we all put into, just, in my opinion, just isn't the right way to go about it. It needs to have checks and balances. It needs to have a process. It needs to have a cap. And just like in your home, you wouldn't push those things past their boundaries because you wouldn't be able to take care of everybody that you have in there. So that said, again, everyone, enjoy the holidays. Stay safe, stay healthy, my brothers and sisters, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks for watching.